on. Hello, everybody. So far, so good. And getting my notes here. Okay, so we're ready to go. Oh, 11:59 and we're ready to go. All right. Good morning, everybody. This is Virginia Hansen. I am with the South Dakota State Archives. I am a professional genealogist and a government records archivist. Sometimes when I mention that, people go, "You're what?" The idea behind the government records archivist is that we take care of the records that come from different offices, all the way from the county offices, city offices, your local courthouse, all the way up to the governor's office. And yes, we sometimes get to tell the governor what to do. So it gets to be kind of interesting. Part of our job here is protecting those records, and those records are a wonderful resource when it comes to our genealogy. This morning, we are going to be doing some question and answer. Several people have sent in questions already, so we're going to start with a few of those. My cohort, my coworker, Sarah Casper, is also working right to my left, and she is doing some she is doing some work. She is going to be checking to see if any other questions come in while we are programming this morning. So let's get started. One real interesting question that came in today was one that says, "What do you recommend when your subject purposely disappears due to criminal activity?" The researcher who asked has tried matching birth, death, marriage, and census records, gathered family histories and interviews. He searched newspapers and land records and traced family members between the two men that he believes are the same person. He makes a good case, but he prefers proof. And the only other suggestion that was indicated was possible DNA testing. Well, we're going to open that up just a little bit. I did learn how to do research way back before the internet. So we're going to come up with some sources that a lot of them will not be on the internet. And I'm going to switch here to my hand notes. Okay, first of all, because he's a black sheep, there's going to be some records. One of those that's not mentioned that he checked was the original prison record. In the original prison record, you're going to find some correspondence list. They kept a track of who wrote in, who he wrote to, things along that line. So that was going to be a very good source to find out who he might possibly be friends with or who he might possibly be living with after. Who picked him up on the last day? There's going to be a record of that in the prison info. Other sidelines, did his wife divorce him during the process? If the wife divorced him, there either before or after his incarceration or even after he was released, there's going to be a record as to where the husband was at the time of the divorce. Hopefully there will be. On the local level, check to see if there is what's called a mother's pension record. This is a type of local social services that was created at the county level. If the mother was left destitute, not able to support herself, if she had children, things along that line, then there's a very good chance that the county stepped in and did offer a little financial assistance. And if that's the case, there's going to be lots of records at the county level as to where the husband might be the reason for her applying for this mother's pension records. There's going to be possibly information, dates of his incarceration, the dates of his release, because as soon as he released, it may change her status. It will state whether the husband, the person imprisoned, was able to return back to the county for a short while or if he just flew the coop. That information will also be in there. Okay. Especially afterwards, did the mother stay on the support? That will also give a clue. It'll have reasons why, and that's all recorded at the courthouse. The county auditor was responsible for payments of those records, or excuse me, of that file. And then the county auditor got permission from the county court. So you have to check with the county court and the county auditor for those types of records. Also, do a search with newspapers. Read and read and read. Sometimes it's not going to be a headline story. Sometimes you will find the fact that he might have shown up, he might have visited for a short time and then left. And that short time is going to be indicated probably more in the social blurbs part of the newspaper rather than in the something that was with a major headline. Okay, check the obit of the wife, maybe the parents of the person that was incarcerated. There might be clues there. And then, of course, the obits of the children. Now, finally, excuse me, allergies are kicking in with this weather. Yeah. Anyway, it was said that you did check census records, but did you check state census? State census records will get you some information that probably not in the federal census. Also, in the census record, I would suggest you check the location of every family member. I've found records where the person comes in, he's no longer with the family, so I start checking possibly his siblings, his brother. He might be working for his brother or brother-in-law or something like that to make a living, where he's no longer welcome at home, depending on the situation. But I would check with all the adults that would be considered part of the family, no matter where they're living. They might be local, they might be neighbors, they might be in the next county, anything along that line. Take oral history with a grain of salt. Not all oral history is going to be accurate. You end up with a little bit of truth in there, but it's exaggerated truth. But it does find some interesting information. Anyway, try out those sources, see what you come up with. If you have any other questions or if it leads to something else that you're not sure of, go ahead and give us a call or give us an email and we'll see what else we can do about this. And excuse me. Yeah, I'm drinking on the job here. Okay. That was kind of a detailed one. Luckily, he was able to come in a little bit early with the question, so I had a minute to think instead of coming up with some of these things off the top of my head. But that was a fun one. That was a fun search. Okay, and also keep track of the two men that he believes may be the same person. That's very possible. Very possible. Whenever he left the prison, he possibly changed his name or went to a variation of his name. You'll have to do some checking there. Anyway, let's continue. Another question. Very basic. It says, I'm interested in learning more about my family history. Where should I start? Well, I have been working on my genealogy for close to 52 years. I started when I was about 11 years old, 11, 12 years old, and I'm still not finished. So you've got a big road ahead of you, an exciting road. But to start with, since we're kind of all incarcerated in our homes, we don't have a lot of access out in the public. To get started with your, luckily if you have internet, and a computer and a printer, there are free downloads for pedigree charts. Check those pedigree charts. A pedigree chart is your family tree. It starts with you, your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and it usually lists some information as to births, deaths, marriages, relationships, that type of thing. There is a second form that I highly recommend you get a hold of or download. It's called a family group sheet. Family group sheets will list mom, dad, details about them, and then all of the kids. And if there's enough room on the family group sheet, it'll have room for spouses and possibly children. So you'll be able to continue on with that. Ancestry, Family Search, several universities, historical societies, they have copies of different types of pedigree charts and family group sheets. Most of them are going to be free downloads. There's no copyright. The only thing I recommend is that when you download them, do keep the little logo on there so that you know where you got it. Because if it's a form that you really like, it'll help you to go back to get another one if you run out of blank copies. Another thing with the group sheets and the pedigree charts is that there are very many different styles. So you might want to go exploring a little bit. There's some that will be, what do they call it, horizontally, left to right from, so you have a wide sheet, or they will be portrait style, and again, starting from left to right. There are some ethnic pedigree charts that start from right to left. And then you also have descendancy charts. So lots of different charts. Get online and do some scrounging around and see what there is out there. Well, once you get those charts, that will give you a basic idea of some of the stuff that you will need to know. Like, for example, start with what you know. You know your own name, you know your birth date, you know if you're married or not, who your spouse is, your parents. And on the pedigree charts, some rule of thumb, do not just use numbers on the dates. When you write in the dates, start, for example, May 4th, 1957, you end up with 5/4/57. Now, is that the 5th of April or is that May 4th? So you have to take that into consideration. I always suggest write at least 3 letters of the month. Then you have the day. Then you have 4 numbers for the year. Because if you write 57, is that 1857 or is that 1957? And pretty soon we'll have 2020, 2021. Is it 1921 or 2021? So make sure you write 4 numbers of the year. Don't be afraid to write in detail. If you want to keep track of where your source is, you can put it on a separate sheet, but I like to do it on the back of that page. It helps keep everything close. For example, if your grandmother says what her birthday is, say that you got it from grandma. And it's oral history, you'll still want to find proof, but at least that's a very good source because it's her birthday. Ask your relatives about the information. Keep asking. Sometimes they won't know right away. I had an aunt who would say, "Oh, I don't know anything about that." And my dad would come along and he would say something and he would deliberately state it wrong. And my aunt would say, "Oh, you know it's this way," and she starts talking like crazy, and I would be sitting off to the side with my notebook and pencil just writing and writing and writing because she would come up with all this information. Okay. Double check what is in your house. Birth records, death records, anything along that line. Do note that even though it is a birth record, it's going to have the parents' information. A lot of times it'll have the parents' age. It'll have the birthplace of the parents. That's wonderful clues. And then you have death records, birth records, all the same thing. Baptismal records, those are usually around. The parents' information is going to be on there. And then, of course, everybody's favorite basic is the census records. One nice thing about the census record is that they kept the census every 10 years. It's federal law. Every 10 years from 1790, and they're doing the last census right now in the year 2020. The the most current census that's available online is 1940. So if you end up with somebody in your family who was born after 1940, you probably won't find them on the census, of course. So you'll have to go back oral history or with your own research until you get back to 1940. But once you get to 1940, check every census you can find. Every census. So you have 1940, 1930, 1920, 1910. And as you go back in time, the person will get younger and younger, and pretty soon you find that person with the parent. Keep track of every column that comes with. There'll be clues on to how old they are. And don't be surprised if one year they're 24, the next year they're 26, or 10 years later they're 26. Not everybody kept excellent track of how old they were. They just said, "Well, I think I'm 26 years old now," and so that's what they wrote down. Or they might be interviewing somebody else. The wife may not know the exact age of the husband. And she might say, well, he's 2 years older than me, so he must be 26. And actually, he's 27. So don't take the birth date as exact whenever you're working with that. So, anyway, so a lot of details in there. I always write my pedigree charts in pencil until I know for sure what the date or what the information is. And then I can change it to pen or I can transfer it to my computer program. And there's a lot of computer programs that will help you. One nice thing about the computer programs is that you can go in and change them after you've written in the information. And a lot of the computer programs out there will even tell you that you've got a wrong date or there's a discrepancy here that doesn't work. For example, if the mother was born after the child, the computer kicks in and says, we've got a problem. The mother can't be born in 1924 if the child was born in 1880. So anyway, so some of those things you can check out. One last thing, join your local historical society, or excuse me, your local genealogy society as soon as possible. Several volunteers in your society will sit with you and get you a good foothold. And then they can advise you as to how to continue with any problems, any questions that you have, your next step in your research. But it is fun. Get online. If you find somebody else that has written a genealogy and they've got the information out there already, do not take that as gospel. But it's great for clues. It's great for clues. I had one distant relative said that my great-great-grandfather was actually married to his niece. No. There was another cousin of his. They were both Roderick Fortson. They were both Baptist ministers. They were born 5 years apart. They both lived in DeSoto Parish, Louisiana. They a lot of little tidbits in there where they were the same. And of course, because they lived so close to each other, and they were both single men at the time, and then whenever they got married, sometimes the marriage records are not really easily accessible. You never know. You never know until you confirm. There's where oral history kicked in. My grandmother said this was the wife. And I'm going, okay, so we got to double check this. And sure enough, my Roderick Fortson had a cousin, Roderick Fortson, 5 years younger. He's the one that married the niece. And the niece was not even blood related to him. He happened in different marriages right in there. So double check what you find online. Never take it as gospel, but do take it as clues. It'll give you great resources, the next place to search. Okay, let's see what else we might have. Okay. Oh, this is an interesting one. How are we doing, Sarah?
Pretty good. We've got a couple questions that came in.
Okay, good. Well, we'll continue with a couple of these that we've been working on. This one, it's kind of a long answer again. But she says, I've been stuck on one part of my research for about 2 years. John Kuhn and his wife, Louisa Shaw Kuhn. These are my great-great-grandparents. Census records have varying birth dates for both. John anywhere from 1802 to 1809, and Louisa between 1820 and 1824. I found census records for them and their 8 children starting in 1840, Bureau County, Illinois, through 1860, Clinton County, Iowa. I'm also unsure about the true death dates for either of them as well. They were married in 1840, and I'd like to find parents for both John Kuhn and Louisa Shaw so I can get a little deeper into my family history. Any assistance would be much appreciated. Thank you in advance for any hints you could give me. This was another interesting one. The trouble with 1820, 1840, in that time period, there's not going to be a lot of civil records in this part of the country. For example, in South Dakota, our first newspapers didn't kick in until 1862. And then by the time we got into civil records, a lot of the counties were doing some, mostly marriages. They kept track of a few of the marriages, a few of the deaths, very few of the births. And so we end up having to resort to possibly some religious records. Hold on here. My allergies again. Okay. So anyway, for civil records, it's a little bit of a tough period, especially in this area. Your best bet is going to be with religious records to start. And do you know the religion for these folks? If you're not sure, what is the predominant religion for your family? If there's a difference between the husband and wife, follow the females, follow the women. The men don't really care as much. So if you have a Methodist marrying a Lutheran and the wife is a Lutheran, more than likely the records are going to be at the Lutheran. Church records may not be online, but a search online for Iowa Lutheran Archives or Congregational Church Archives, etc., something similar, will get you in contact with where the older records are retained. People have told me that, well, I checked the church where they went and the church burned down. And I go, so? There's a lot more resources. If the minister, the pastor, the priest, whoever did their job, they recorded the information locally, a copy went to the family, a copy stayed at the church, and then at the end of the week or the end of the month, he compiled all of this information, sent it on to his office. That office sent it on to the next level. So you end up with several levels of possible records out there. Okay, for online sources, you might want to check Ancestry and Family Search. They are good for having church records online. Not all of these records have been indexed, so if nothing is found on the main search, do a search for the record itself for your area and then do a browse. This will let you search page by page, just like being there at the church office or the archives. Keep an open mind when it comes to spelling of names. The registrar may not have spelled it the same as the owners. For example, John Coon, C-O-O-N, maybe John Cohn, C-O-H-N, or something that variation. In the 1840s in Iowa, it's also going to be skimpy for newspapers, but still check for the possibility. Chronicling America is a free newspaper site. It's wonderful. It's been growing by leaps and bounds, and even South Dakota has close to 60 some I'm trying to think, 65 newspapers just from South Dakota on there. And I understand by the end of 2022, we're supposed to have close to 85 newspapers online. So like I said, every state now is involved with that, so you will find a few. Anyway, with a search like this, you'll possibly find a list through Yahoo or Google, and you can check for terms such as free newspapers online Iowa. Those 4 terms. I don't use quotation marks. I just have Google do the work, and you don't have to worry about a specific address. That's the nice thing about Yahoo and Google anymore. They think like us, which is really nice. Okay, with a search like this, you will possibly find a list with access at university libraries or other venues not connected to Newsbank, Genealogy Bank, or other pay-for sites. Also search for local listings of transcribed newspaper extracts. An example is on our website at history.sd.gov. Whenever you click on archives, there's collection indexes and surname search, newspaper surname search. And you click on that, you type in a surname, and we've got extracts from several people, several organizations that have gone through and extracted their names, vital records from their newspapers. And they allowed us to take all of that information and put it on our website. It is not 100% complete, but it is very good chance that you might find some part of the family. While we're on that subject at history.sd.gov, it's our website, check our other indexes. The General Federated Women's Club is a wonderful resource for the women. They interviewed the women, and their oral histories are recorded, transcribed, I should say. They're written down. Some of them are a 2-page vignette of when great-grandmother came up over the hill and saw that little sod shanty she was going to have to live in for the next 6 months. And then there's others that are 25 pages with photos. They are just wonderful, just wonderful. Okay, so anyway, whenever you get onto Chronicling America and some of those sites, keep in mind that again, spelling is not always going to be exactly the way you think. If you type in a name such as John Coon, I would also do variations such as J. Coon or Mr. Coon because you're in the right area. And then once you start reading the article, you'll come across it. If you're looking for obituaries, things like that, her name is probably or possibly not going to be spelled out. She will be listed as Mrs. John Coon. And then in the article, maybe her name might be mentioned. With luck, there she will be. And if the family cannot remember her maiden name at the time that they were writing up the obit, then there may not even be that information. But it's definitely worth checking. Also, again, while you're checking for obits, check for the social blurbs. Those social blurbs are the little tidbits where it says that Jeffrey Coon, son of John Coon, was in town for his father's funeral. He will be returning to Michigan, or whatever town he came from, he will be returning. That's wonderful for clues. Sometimes it'll even mention that his wife and 6 kids were with him. So a lot of things there to check. And so, anyway, other sites with older indexes, newspaper extracts, that sort of thing, are for example, the U.S. Gen websites. This includes the Iowa Gen Web. Whenever you get into your state, actually you can go just U.S. Gen Web. It takes care of the whole United States. It'll ask you what state. In this case, click on Iowa, and then it'll ask you what county. So you will have to know what county. And it's a big help if you do. You click on the county and see what may have been recorded or transcribed. Now remember, these sites were created before Ancestry and are transcribed information. The folks who did the volunteer work got everything going. They did the best they could, but you might find a problem once in a while with misspellings. But keep in mind, they might also have been spelling it the way they saw it, the way they found it. So you'll have to double check that. Also with Gen websites, Roots Web, some of these older sites, they were started back in the 1980s. Some of the webmasters at the time might have died suddenly and not been able to give their information, their passcodes and that sort of thing, on to the next person in the group. And so sometimes the links don't always work. And I have discovered that with Ancestry now. The South Dakota State Archives indexes that have been picked up by Ancestry, such as our cemetery indexes, the links do not work. So whenever you get onto Ancestry and it says go to the original website and it says not available. So keep that in mind that sometimes you have to take a look at the website and then just go actually to the website through another window. And hopefully in the near future I've started getting contact with Ancestry to let them know what's up. But it's going to be kind of major because there's a lot of links to our website, which is good advertising for us, but still a little frustrating whenever you can't get the link going. So keep that in mind with some of these older websites. They're wonderful, the information is great, and gives you great clues. Okay, if you have dates of death for the children, check the obituaries for any clues as to the death of the parents or even location of burials. For example, Henry Coons was buried beside his parents in Riverside Cemetery. Bingo. Now you know where the parents were buried. Once you find where they were buried, then you can check for local cemetery information, local burial information. So anyway, you're looking for that type of information. The local courthouse may have wills and probate for the family members. They may have local indexes in-house. Land records, tax records will give you a clue as to the time of death. I found my great-grandfather's approximate time of death because the land was transferred from him to my great-great-great-grandfather to my great-great-grandfather in 1880. In 1880, he was on the census. 1881, the land had reverted to his son. And so I knew that he had, and through the will, I did not find a will, but because land tax records, it did show that it was inherited land. And so the tax was transferred over. So I knew that he died approximately the end of 1880 or early 1881. Property in the family transferring to the oldest boy is usually a good indication of the recent death of the parents. Don't be shy about contacting your local genealogical society or historical society for the two counties you mentioned. I've had great luck with the local groups doing the research through the newspapers or using their own in-house indexes. And because it saves me travel time and money, I always give a donation for their work. I did this with Minnesota. I knew I wouldn't be able to get up there. I contacted them and they said, well, let's see what we can find. They found 5 of my 6 obituaries and it was wonderful. And so I didn't have any qualms about sending them a $50 bill. That was $10 an obit, and it all went for donation to their society. They were very appreciative. They said they would put my information on their website. I got a lot of bonus material off of that one. So donations never hurt. Keep that in mind. Okay, next question. Oh, let's see. In a book, my great uncle wrote about his father, my great grandfather. He mentions a boarding house that they ran in Deadwood in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I have the name of the boarding house, but I cannot find any information about it other than it was in Elizabethtown. I guess that was just outside of Deadwood. Where can I look for more info? Uh, that's going to be kind of fun because boarding houses in early Deadwood, I'm going to say there were a million. I'm exaggerating, but there were a lot of boarding houses in the area. A lot of times because if the minor died, the wife had to make a living somehow. And a lot of times she would rent out a couple rooms in her house and it was considered a boarding house. And they may have just had the whatever type of name, the family name, that sort of thing. One thing you can check is the census records. If you can catch him on a census. 1890 is difficult because most of that census has been destroyed. It is now gone. But if he's there in 1880 or 1900, excuse me, that time period, if you can find him and he might be a boarder, see who owns the house. That's going to be your best bet. See who owns the house. And usually to the left, nobody looks at the very far left column on the census. On the far left column, you're going to find a street address or a street name or even the house address on that information. So keep a lookout there. One last thing with the Deadwood, there is an online index to the early Deadwood newspapers. I believe South Dakota State University has taken over that index, and I believe the Deadwood Public Library may have a copy of that index on their webpage. So you'll have to double check both of those. But otherwise, I usually find it very fast on SDSU, and I just do a Google search for it. And you can download it. It takes a few seconds. And then you could type in a term or a name. And once you have the name, you'll find information. They may be coming in on the stagecoach, or they may have had some luck, or they may be of a political bent. So there's going to be lots of information in those Deadwood newspapers. And the indexes to that go from 1876 until about 1900. I am going to back up a little bit. I think it's closer to 1898. But there's some good information on there, and it will tell you the date of the newspaper, the page number, and the column. And then if you want access to the newspapers, you can get on our webpage. We are sending out our newspapers by interlibrary loan. They are on microfilm. So if you have a local library with a microfilm reader, we can get copies of those to you. If you cannot access for interlibrary loan, please give us a call, email us. Whatever the case might be, we'll get started. We can do the research for you. There are some research fees, but fairly simple compared to some. $15 for a single search. We'll look for an obit, we'll look for a name. If you want us to do several searches, keep in mind whatever we can do under an hour, we'll do for $25 plus cost of extra copies. And all that information is on our webpage. You'll have some fun searching that out. But otherwise, if you have any questions like that or want us to do the research, give us a contact. We'll be sure see what we can do. And related to us doing research, this came in. Good morning, Virginia. My question is, how do I get a copy of my great-grandfather's naturalization record? I have looked on the South Dakota State Historical Society website and found the index to the location in your files, and she has the files listed. Everything is there. The date of intent and second papers, which is about 1875, is the date of naturalization. The original records are here. In 1972, the federal government said that all states have to have their naturalization records in one repository. And our legislature decided that they would all come to the South Dakota State Archives. And even to this day, a few more naturalization records trickle in. I have a small half box of records that on my desk that somebody donated not too long ago. But for the most part, we have the majority of all the federal the naturalization records here. And so we can do a search for you. We can check other sources, and there's also clues. So we can kind of prove, match, that sort of thing, comparing to the census and comparing to the local records here. So we'll make sure we've got the best information for you. Okay, so give us a contact, and I'll be contacting this person directly too to let her know that this is the information. Okay, I think that's what I have for my own. What have we got here?
Bunch of them that came in.
Oh, there's been a few more coming in. All right. Okay. Oh, fun. Interesting. I am looking for information on the first man from South Dakota killed in World War I. Oh, you have a name, John Martin Bliss. I was told there is or was a photo of him in the Capitol building. Can you confirm this? Okay. More than likely we've got some sources. The state historian at the time, Robinson, he did collect lots of information from Spanish American War, World War I, World War II, that sort of thing. A lot of the History Commission records would have things along this line. As far as a photo of him in the Capitol building, I'd have to do some research. We could check our vertical file. We could check our Capitol building artwork, if it was a portrait type of picture or if it was an actual photo. There would also be newspaper accounts of him, so there would be a lot of resources. It would take some research to do this. I can't guarantee we'd be able to find something in an hour, but we might find some good clues within that first hour. But at least we'd be able to get started. There's a very good possibility we'll find positive information on this. Okay, so another one. My great-grandmother received 40 acres of land in the 1870s through a relative's service in the military. Okay, military patents are what those are called. What criteria did she have to meet to get this land? How long and what type of service did the relative have to do to receive this land? Land patent issued in 1881. Okay, first of all, okay, this is kind of fun. Military patents were issued to anybody in service starting with the American Revolution. And it worked up the War of 1812, the Dakota Indian Wars, the Civil War. They were all had this process where a person could get a military patent. Excuse me. Oh, sorry about that. Too much talking and allergies combined. Okay. So anyway, with a military patent, they could be handed down, they could be sold, they could be inherited. There's a lot of ways that it could move from one family member to the other. The soldier himself is the one who is issued the military patent. He has to have an honorable discharge. As I'm saying this, I'm thinking I don't recall having any where the soldier died and the family requested it. I've never seen one of those, but I suppose that was possible. But for the most part, the ones that we've worked with here, the soldier inherited it by going to his commanding officer after when he's gotten his discharge and said he would like a land patent. And with that land patent, he was able to, the land patent, he was able to take that patent. It's just a small certificate, usually just a couple inches wide and a couple inches tall, and it would state that John Jones has was a soldier of good honor, good repute. He has earned this right, and he is in the east of the Allegheny Mountains. He was probably given the equivalent of about 80 acres. If he went west, it would qualify him for 160 acres. So there was an advantage, and it was to the person's advantage to come west for a little bit more land. And some of those areas were starting to open up, so it made it worthwhile. We have one story we traced back the person in Pennsylvania. He fought in the American Revolution. He ended up with inheriting his father's land in Pennsylvania. He didn't have anywhere to go. He didn't want to leave his farm. He had no reason to go on, but all the land in his area was taken. Now his neighbor had a younger son who wanted to travel and find his own place. And so he told the young son, his neighbor's son, I have to pay my taxes. I have this land patent. I can sell it to you if you want it, and then you can take this and go west and find a piece of land and that sort of thing, etc. And so he sold the land patent for $50, which was a big chunk of money, but hey, if you go far enough, it's 160 acres for that $50. That young man, it was like a deed of transfer. He transferred the information over to the young man. The young man took it west, and whenever he found his land, he just filed it with the land register, and it was his land. He did not have to wait the 5 years. It was still considered a homestead, and it was registered as a homestead, but when it was registered, it was listed as a military patent. A military patent. So anyway, that's kind of a basic history. And so women could use them, men could use them as long as they qualified. They did not have to fight in the war to earn the military patent. Okay, and if you're curious about it, you'd have to go into some military history to find out how long, because the rules changed as they went. Sometimes all they had to do was be in the service for 6 weeks. There was another time period I remember they had to be in for at least 2 months. And sometimes it was stated for a minimum of 2 months or until the end of the war. So if they joined up and they fought for 3 days and the war ended, all they had to do was fight for 3 days or be in the army for 3 days and they qualified for the military patent. So each time period is going to be affected by the rules for that time. Okay, I hope that answered the question. How long and what type of service did the relative have? And they didn't always have to fight. They just had to be in the military doing their job. Okay, next one. How we doing? Oh, we got about 15 minutes yet? Okay, good. Oh, we have from Candace. A family member has done extensive genealogy and is using the PAF system, Personal Ancestral File, PAF 5 program. Okay, to document. The program is no longer being updated, so she needs to transfer a vast amount of info to another program. Any recommendations? Okay, that's a little trickier, but the easiest way, get a hold of the Salt Lake City Library, the Mormon Library in Salt Lake City. They have several people on staff that are very technologically able to transfer from the old PAF system. A couple friends of mine have gone from the PAF system to, I believe, Family Tree Maker. I don't know exactly how it converts. I don't do that type of thing, but I do understand it's possible. And PAF 5, I think, is new enough that they might be able to transfer it. But I would definitely get a hold of if you're in a city where they have a local library, family history library connected with the Mormon Church, you can start with contacting them, and then they would get you in touch with the right people. I don't know what they charge or if they charge. If I remember right, it seems like they did, but it was fairly reasonable compared to some tech people that charge an arm and a leg out there. But they want you to get the best you can and do as what you can. But as far as programming, I would double check if you get onto Family Tree Maker and the FAQ section. I hope it's Family Tree Maker. But if you get on the FAQ section, even for PAF, if you look that up and say converting to another program, that type of thing, they may have some suggestions. But definitely get a hold of the Mormon Library, the Salt Lake Library out in Salt Lake City. Okay, but yeah, and it can be done. From what I understand, it can be done. Okay, from Heather. I saw the Ingalls Homestead folks have a homestead certificate that details what was on the farm when they got their final deed from the government. Is this available for all South Dakota homesteaded properties? Yes. Oh, I love definite answers. Oh, you'd like to know how? Okay. When you file for a homestead, it is recorded on, basically in South Dakota, it was recorded on what's called a land patent register. The land patent register, the earliest one starts with the homestead when they started in 1862. And each state has their own first homestead. Each county or each area had their own first homestead. But most of them started 1862, and the last one in South Dakota, I think, was 1948. I believe 1948 was the last one. Well, anyway, that homestead certificate was the final papers that they earned whenever they did their improvements or they paid it off, whatever the case might be. Now, the land patent register will tell you the very first day that they walked into the land register's office, and it will tell you the very last day when they filed their final certificate. And so that information is great. But if you want the detail is what's called the land application file. The land application file is actually stored at the National Archives in Washington, D.C. If you go to nara.gov, nara.gov, click on Search Your Family, click on, I think at this time you have to click on Others because there's another page, but you're looking for land records. Whenever you get to there, you can also do a Google search, but search for NATF84. That is the form you have to fill out in order to get your land application file. Now, to get that land application file, you will need to know the township, range, section number, aliquots or partials, that type of information. You can contact us and we can help you with that information. You will need to know what type of homestead it is. Again, you can check with us. The type of homestead, it could be a traditional homestead, it could be a tree claim, it could be a military patent, it could be a cash exempt patent where they started as a homestead and 2 years later they had enough cash crops and they went ahead and paid cash and finished it off. The advantage to that part, if they paid cash for it, is that they didn't have to follow the rules and regulations. Otherwise, in order to finish it, they had to make the improvements. And the land application file is really nice whenever you're trying to get a description. It will tell you if the farmer or the rancher, whoever the landowner started with a 10 by 12 soddy, if he started with a tar paper shack, And 3 months later, he started building his house. It will tell you that information. It will tell you if the soddy had a dirt floor or if it had a hardwood floor, if it had a door and one window, if it had a wood roof, if it had one room or if it had two rooms. It'll tell you if there is a, a little barn off to the side. It'll tell you what size corral it had. It will also tell you how many acres he planted during that time when he was making improvements. It will also tell you what crops he planted. So there's some wonderful information. Now, I do want to give you a heads up. You will have to order it online, or I highly recommend that you order it online. That's the shortest way. If you download the form, fill it in, send it in, they will get it finished, get back to you, and you may not hear from them for almost a year, from 9 months to a year before you hear from them, just because of their load. If you download onto your computer, fill out the form, send it in by electronic form, send your credit card information. The last person told me they got an answer within 6 weeks. 6 weeks because the payment was in hand. They went ahead and sent the information. It was wonderful. So there's a lot of good information out there. And if you want more detail, you can email me or email the ArcRef address or connect with us here on Facebook, and we can send you those links. I can send you the address through an email, so all you have to do is click on it. That'll sometimes makes it easier. But the Homestead Certificate is actually just the final patent. And then the information that you want to put a little meat on the bones, per se, is the land application file. Okay, so if you have any more questions on that, go ahead and let us know. So I think I have,
Yeah, those are the ones that I already wrote down.
they've already been, okay. I was looking at a list over here on the side of my monitor and I go, oh good, this looks familiar. Yeah. So anyway, we are real close. I'm going to mention a few things. We've been celebrating South Dakota State Archives Month. We used to do this in a week. And we were so exhausted by the end of the week, we decided to spread it out. So now it's Archives Month. So that's kind of nice. Anyway, we've been celebrating Friday Fun with History. My cohorts, Sarah and a couple other co-workers here, they've been putting some fun stuff, such as South Dakota History Quiz. We have puzzles, both for the simpler ones, which smallest ones, I think like 30, 40 pieces. Something like that. Those are the ones I go for because I can do them quick. And then there's some that are larger, 50, 60, 70 puzzle, 70 piece.
Most of them are about 55.
Okay, I understand most of them about 55 pieces. They're wonderful. We took several of our photos from our digital archives and put them online. So they're local. They're South Dakota puzzles. Kind of fun. We have coloring pages. And we have two more coming up for the Fun Friday, so keep your eyes open there. Keep in mind that this recording and a previous recording has been recorded. This video has been recorded, so you will be able to come back to it. If you were not able to attend it live, then you can check it out later, and I believe through YouTube. Correct? Yes. Okay, previous recording was from Matthew Reitzel, a wonderful young man with photos, that sort of thing. And he did a very interesting presentation. I started listening to it. Sometimes I start doing other work, but no, when I started listening to this, I had to listen to the whole thing. But he did one on the history of the Chicago Northwestern Railroad Bridge here in Pierre. And very good photos, very good examples, and a very good presentation on history of the railroad in this area. So that was a very good program. I can't say that enough. In fact, I may go back and check out on something because he talked about something and somebody said, do you know anything about it? And I think, Matthew talked about that. We should go check that out. So anyway, again, this is the South Dakota State Archives. And I'm Virginia Hansen with the help of my co-worker, Sarah Casper. Thank you for the electronic part of this. She's been keeping all of the machinery going. It's been wonderful. So all I do is sit back, relax, and talk. So anyway, if you have any questions, please contact us. ArcRef. You can also go to history.sd.gov, click on archives, and I believe over to the right there's a link that says about us. And when you get to that, there's a place where it says contact staff. So, but if you email us or get on our webpage, give us some emails. We'll be glad to contact you and give information so that you can get it to us easier. Otherwise, another good one is ARCREF, ARCHREF .sd.gov. No, at sd.gov.
At state.sd.us.
Let me double check. ARCREF. Okay, there we go. ARCREF, ARCHREF at state.sd.us. There we go. I never email myself, so I had to think about that. Okay. So anyway, I think my hour is about up. I got about 5 minutes. We'll stick around another minute in case anybody has any other questions. Oh, some of the things we can talk about. Some of the collections we have here. A lot of these are not online. A lot of these are not indexed, but they are collections that we use when we're doing research to help people fill out their genealogy. One of those, of course, is a census, but everybody's familiar with the federal census. We also have the South Dakota State Census. The state census, the first one was issued in 1885. The next one was 1895, and I hate to say we lost a good chunk of that in a fire here in South Dakota. There's a few pages of that one survived, but we don't have a lot of the 1895. We do have 1905, 1915, 25, 35, and 45. Those are all on cards, and we do have access to all of those. Those are wonderful. We do have all the naturalization papers, first papers and second papers. The first papers are when they first filed for citizenship. The second papers are when they finalized, usually 5 years afterwards. Poll records, especially census substitutes. Poll records are wonderful. That's where they recorded who registered to vote. It may have been just as a school election. It may have been at a county election. It may have been voting for the mayor. But we do have a lot of poll records from the counties. We have warrants, which were the payments issued, especially those from the 1890s. Those are nice because it tells who it was issued to and what the job was that they were doing. So, and again, it does confirm that the person was there at the time. School census records. School census records are wonderful. They are partially restricted in that we cannot put them online as far as the full information because of laws from the Department of Education, Department of Health, etc. Birth dates and school grades are not allowed on the web, folks. We've had people say, oh, I found my great-grandmother's school records and her classmates, she was a teacher. So here was these listings of kids and their birth dates and their grades and everything, and they started posting them online. No, 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 you be careful because there's a lot of laws that we have to take care of. Okay, tax records. We do have a lot of tax records. We've been collecting them off and on. We try not to collect every single thing because we just do not have the room. There's a lot of tax records we've been microfilming, which saves a lot of space. We'll be digitizing quite a few more. And so as courthouses run out of room, they contact us. So if the courthouse doesn't have it, there's a good chance we do. If we don't have it, the courthouse should still have it. So tax records are wonderful whenever you're working with land, location, ownership, history, etc. Land records, we did talk about homestead a little bit. Graves, grave information. We've got lots of information. Started with the WPA cemetery assessments. Those were created during the WPA days. So it gives you a lot of information, a lot of detail that we can check into that you may not have thought of previously that will add information to your family. So, and remember, anything that we have talked about today, any records that we have talked about today, are not just South Dakota. The records are found in every state. So if we're talking about grave assessments, those were done in every state. If we want school census, every state. If you want poll records, again, every state. So keep in mind, wonderful information out there. And so I hope you have happy hunting. Yeah, so good luck. And if there's any other questions, give us a call or give us an email. Okay, thank you.
So just go ahead and click that button there and then say
And end.